Good evening, everyone. It's 6:30 p.m. I'll declare this agenda briefing forum is open. I'd like to invite Councillor Cruiser to read the acknowledgement of country.
Nang Jerapin Wajak, Nunga Bujak, Yakin, Nija Nija Baruk. I'm honoured to be standing on Wajak Noongar country on the banks of the Swan River. Nang Kadich Noongar Muut, Ken Kadak Nija Wajak Noongar Buja. Nang Kadich Nija Noongar Berdia Kura, Yay, Buddha, Balapin Mudich Noongar Kadajin, Muut Wer Buja Yay. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and respect past, present, and emerging leaders, their continuing cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship with the land, which continues to be important today. Nang Yoga, Balapin Noongar, Berdia Wer Muut Nija Buja. I thank them for the contribution made to life in the town of Victoria Park and to this region.
Thanks, Councillor Cruiser. Item 4 is announcements from the presiding member. 4.1, the purpose of this agenda briefing forum is to provide an opportunity for elected members to ask questions and obtain additional information on officer reports in the draft ordinary council meeting agenda. It is not a decision-making forum, nor is it open for debate. Members of the public that may be directly affected by an item on the agenda can make presentations, deputations, statements and ask questions prior to the matter being formally considered by council at the next ordinary council meeting. 4.2, notice of recording and live streaming. All participation in the meeting will be audio and visually recorded and live streamed on the town's website. The live stream will be archived and made available on the town's website after the meeting. 4.3, conduct of the meeting. All those in attendance are expected to extend due courtesy and respect to the meeting by refraining from making any adverse or defamatory remarks regarding council, the staff or any elected member. No one shall create a disturbance at a meeting by interrupting or interfering with the proceedings through expressing approval or dissent, by conversing or by any other means. All questions and statements made by members of the public are not to personalise any elected member or member of staff. 4.4, public participation time. There is an opportunity to ask questions and make statements at the beginning and the end of the meeting. The opportunity to ask questions and make statements at the end of the meeting is limited to those members of the public who did not participate in the first public participation time at this meeting. Public participation time will be held for a maximum of 30 minutes. Any additional time must be by agreement from the meeting, will be in 5-minute increments. As per our usual practice, there's a limit of 3 questions per person, 2 minutes allocated to the making of statements, and public participation time for agenda briefing forum is only in relation to items that are on the council's agenda for this forum. If there are less people in the public gallery and those who are present wish to ask more than 3 questions, we can be more generous with the number of questions and the time allocated. 4.5 is questions taken on notice. Responses to questions taken on notice that relate to an agenda item will be presented in the officer report for the ordinary council meeting agenda under the heading Further Consideration. Item 5, attendance. We have all elected members in attendance, save for Councillor Anderson, who is an apology. And we have a number of members of the town staff, led by the CEO, Mr. Askew. We have no persons on approved leave of absence. Item 6 is declarations of interest. Mr. CEO, do we have any declarations of interest, please?
I've received none, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any elected members who have got an interest to declare but have not yet done so and would like to do it now? No? All right, just a gentle reminder as the conversation is going through and questions arise, if you do consider that you do have an interest that needs to be declared, please let me know immediately so we can take care of that on the record. Item 7 is public participation time, which are now open at 6:34 p.m. First person on the list, Luana Lissandro, please come forward, state your name and suburb, please, and look forward to hearing your questions.
Luana Lissandro, Lathline, and the only person present currently in the gallery. I'm wanting to, my item relates to 11.2, the outcome of the annual meeting of electors held on the 10th of March 2025. First, just a correction, my suburb was listed as Carlisle. In fact, it's actually Lathlane. I did look at the recording to ensure that I did say Lathlane and didn't accidentally say Carlisle. But I'm here in relation to the motion that I presented for online petitions. Looking at the comment of the officer, I understand that there is obviously the second tranche, but my motion was basically to investigate the introduction and implementation of petitions. Looking at the draft consultation paper given sent to obviously local governments in relation to standardised meeting procedures in relation to part 2, public participation, point 8, petition. One of the points reads that allow local government to establish an electronic petitioning system if they wish. So I understand that the council wants to wait until the final submissions have been reported on and you receive a report on that, and then obviously you can then move to the new standardised meeting procedures. But if that particular section is not amended and remains as is under the consultation paper, then it allows you the provision to be able to have electronic petitions. So it doesn't make it a requirement. It means that you have to make a decision as to whether you want to have electronic petitions or not. So I would think it would be feasible, given that electronic petitions are standard for federal government and state government, to be able to look at this so that when you move to looking at the final outcome of standardised meeting procedures, you do have an understanding of where you position yourself in relation to the matter. So I guess it's more a statement than a question. I would hope that the town is progressive enough to move forward. I don't see that there would be submissions against electronic petitions, given that it's standard. And the council did proceed with live streaming, given that it was also presented as a motion at an annual electors meeting by myself many years ago. So I would hope that the council could move forward with this, and one of the elected members could consider moving an amendment to that particular section of my motion to look at the intention of investigating it so that you are ready to be able to move when the standardised meeting procedures are presented as the second tranche. Other item is the motion on bus shelters. I did have a look at the list of bus shelters that were stated as possibly being included, but I believe that it doesn't include some of those bus shelters that were actually removed when the hard stands were done by the PTA. And again, my understanding is that the hard stands are fully funded by the government, the state government, whereas the bus shelters are 100% funded or should be funded by local government. It did indicate something about some kind of subsidy scheme, so I guess I'm going to ask a question about has the state government just introduced a new scheme allowing for 50% of subsidy to be able to be put towards bus shelters?
Direct that question to the Chief Operations Officer, Ms Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the Chair, I'm sorry, but we'll have to take that on notice and come back to you.
All right, thank you. We'll take that on notice. Ms Lysandro?
Yes, okay, thank you. So yeah, I'm wondering whether it's possible for I guess, the council to look at what was originally there. I mean, I could have trawled through Google Maps to try and find bus stops. I know of at least 3 that did have bus shelters that didn't have any bus shelter reinstated once the hard stands were put in place. But yeah, I guess we're wanting to have an active transport strategy and make it appealing for people to catch public transport, particularly for those who are elderly and have children and people with prams, etc. We would want some type of a shelter there. I do understand the council has pushed seating in some of those, but a shelter is much more ideal because at least it will provide some protection, hopefully, for people using public transport. That's pretty much it, really. It was just those 2 particular points. I really would like to urge elected members to be able to look at making an amendment. I did see that one of the recommendations or the discussion points, point 5 on page 13, said, should council wish to progress any of the electors' motions, council will need to endorse a notice of motion at a future meeting or an amendment to the recommendation contained within the report. So I urge elected members to make that consideration. When you're investigating something, you're not making a decision, you're making an investigation as to what the costs would be in relation to changing things, particularly with electronic petitions, and I understand that there would be costs involved in that in relation to having it on the website. And again, it's standard practice and procedures, and the discussion paper by the government did say that it was optional, so you are going to have to make a decision at some point. Thank you.
Thank you. There being no other persons in the public gallery, I will close public participation time at 6:42 p.m. Item 8 is presentations. We have none. Item 9 is deputations. We have none. Item 10, method of dealing with agenda business. As per my usual practice, I'm going to read out the item numbers from the agenda for which questions have already been received. Subject to your agreement, these are the only items that we'll be speaking about tonight. So if you have submitted questions, received answers on some of these item numbers, and you no longer wish to ask questions about the item, please let me know after I've read out the list of items, because we can take those items off the list. And equally, if there are questions that you have for any items that are not on this list, please let me know so we can add them to the list. So they are in order. 11.2, outcomes from annual meeting of electors 10 March 2025. 11.5, local emergency management arrangements. 12.1, economic development grants 2024-25 recommended recipients. 12.2, public comment period draft youth action plan 2025 to 2028. 12.3, community benefit strategy update. 13.1, TVP 2503 tree audit services. 13.2, food organics and garden organics implementation. 14.1, schedule of accounts March 2025, and 14.2, financial statements March 2025. So are there any of those items that elected members know that they've submitted questions for that they don't wish to pursue tonight? I'm going to take them off the list. Councillor Miles?
12.5.
That's to add one in, is that right? 12.5?
I mean 11.5. The one about the economic grants.
Oh, okay, that's 12.1.
12.1. Yep,
So
thanks.
you're happy for that to come out? Is there any elected member who wants that to stay in? No? All right, so 12.1 is coming off the list. I've asked a series of questions about the local emergency management arrangements 11.5. I've received detailed answers to that late this afternoon. Probably not looking at following up any of those questions right now. Has anybody else got questions they want to deal with about the local emergency management arrangements 11.5? No, not looking like got any takers for that. Right, anybody else who wants to have any of the items taken off the list? Councillor Cruiser?
Questions about 14.1.
All right, is there anyone else who has questions about 14.1 that they want to pursue this evening? No? All right. I also had sent through a long list of questions, but I'm still working my way through those answers. So 14.1 comes out. Anybody else? Councillor Minson?
Thank you. Yeah, my answers on questions to item 13.2, the FOGO roll out. They've been
All right.
answered.
Are there ones that you're not planning on asking?
Yeah, they've been answered, so I'm happy for that to be taken up. Yep.
Yeah, okay. I do know there are other people who've asked questions about that. Are there other people who want to keep 13.2 FOGO still in? Yes. All right, that's fair enough. Anybody else who wants to see anything taken off the list or added in? Councillor Devereux.
Mayor Vernon, the draft youth action plan, I've got the answer that I needed for that, so I don't now have the cheat sheet. I'm happy, thank you.
Right, thank you. We're going to keep that one in because I've submitted some questions which I think just got answered late this afternoon on that. All right, so on that basis, we're down to 11.2, 12.2, 12.3, 13.1, 13.2 and 14.2. All right, so we're starting off with 11.2, outcomes from the annual meeting of electors from the 10th of March. Councillor Hamer, I understand you've got some questions about this item.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just following on from the questions from the gallery, the question I asked just restated the answer that was in the report. But referring...
Sorry, Councillor Hamer, what question did you ask? Because don't forget, your questions that you may have submitted by email are not on the record for this forum.
Correct. 11.2, motion 4, was the option to look at including online petitions in the local law. And the answer of that was used in the report, talked about the upcoming state government reforms and how that has to be come into place before we could consider doing anything. So can I have the officers just talk about why we can't investigate the online petitions option now, being as that state government reforms do mention that it is an option for us to have if we wanted to?
Sure, direct that question to Ms Tucker, the Manager of Governance and Strategy.
Thank you for the question. There is some extra information at the end of that question in item 2. But basically what it is it's just a consultation paper that's out at the moment for comment. It's not been enacted into law, and so we don't actually know what the state government is going to pass when it comes to standardised meeting procedures. We don't know what's going to be in there. They're waiting for the feedback from the whole of the sector before they actually make those regulations. And so until they make those regulations, we don't know what's actually in there. And I think it's also important to note that there could be a possibility that there's parts of those meeting procedures that we won't be able to amend. They did that with the Model Code of Conduct regulations, where we had to have model codes of conduct and we weren't allowed to amend those regulations or those codes either. So until they're actually legislated, we're in a bit of a holding pattern to see what we can do, because we can't actually amend our current standing orders either, because we know these new legislation is going to be enacted soon, but when, we don't actually know. So that's the problem we've got at the moment. Once it's been enacted, then we'll be in a position to know what we can do. And there's also a possibility that it might already be standard in there that you can have online petitions. And so that's the difficulty we've got. So until we've actually got what's been passed by Parliament, we can't actually do anything or make any consultation or make any decisions on it, because it's just all hypothetical at this point in time, unfortunately.
Thanks. Through the Mayor, so the correct appropriate method for this would be to wait until that reforms has been in place and then investigate what could be done at that point in time. So another motion or elected member would have to do that at that point in time, or could we have an amendment to this motion that flagged that as a point in time?
Ms Tucker?
It's sort of a bit redundant to make a motion to make a change if we don't know what's actually going to be legislated. So my suggestion would be to wait until Parliament has passed the regulations, and then we'll be in a position to understand what it is, because there could be a possibility we don't need to change anything.
Through the Mayor, the motion reads that it's not to make a change. It says the option to look at including online petitions. So it sounds to me like what would be needed, to investigate, to sort of come up with those answers is not asking for the actual change to be enacted. It's just investigating what would need to be done to achieve that, which is somewhat different to what you've said.
Ms Tucker?
Thank you. So, if the model local law is enacted and it allows for online petitions, depending if council are happy with what's contained within that legislation, there's the possibility that no action might be needed. If unhappy with what's been proposed, then what we'd have to do is go through the local law making process. So that's contained within the Act, it's all legislated. And part of that process is to go out for public consultation. So to amend the local law, whether we've got the ability, if we've got the ability to do that, we'll have to follow the process in the Local Government Act. So it's very strict about what we do to amend a local law.
Councillor Hamer, anything further?
So the officer's recommendation is to not have any amendment to flag a future point in time to investigate online petitions. It would simply just to be relook at this issue or by itself if we wanted to, separately to this motion.
Ms Tucker?
I'm sorry, can you say that again? That's a bit confusing.
Sorry. So the only thing that you're recommending us to do is to do nothing until we know exactly what the reforms say, and then look at doing something. If we will then have another motion to enact or not enact that at that point in time. If, for example, the reform said that we could implement that, we would then have to look at what that process was to make that change ourselves, if it gave us that capacity.
Ms Tucker?
Thank you. If the reform said you could, and it's not contained within the amendment or within the regulations, well, then that's something that would come back. And I would suggest that there's probably other aspects of the model local law that would be give some discretion to a council about some of the process that they'd want to make as well, not just online petitions. There could be other things in relation to public participation, lots of different things that the council might want to look at once the model local laws are out. And then if there's ability to make some changes to those new local laws, then it would be my suggestion to look at that holistically and make all those changes in one suite, one go, rather than just piecemeal. So the suggestion is to wait to see what's actually recommended or what's published before any position is taken on any item in the proposed local law.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on this item? Councillor Melrosa?
This is maybe a point of clarity that I need for some of the commentary here, but it seems to be my understanding that some of the comments the officers make for these motions are actually going to happen regardless of whether we would put up an amendment to or a notice of motion or not. Is that how I read it?
Ms Tucker?
Are you referring to all the recommendations within the body of the report or just in the ones in relation to the standing orders or the meeting procedures?
No, not those. There's a number of motions where it says the town can do something, and then there's ones such as motion 3. To address this, the street improvement team has decided to install a central solid barrier. So I'm just wondering what the decisions are to do, each one. I'm not sure how it's working.
Ms Tucker?
Thank you. In the report, it mentions that council can decide to move a motion to make any of those motions happen, but all those motions from the annual meeting of electors must be considered by council. It doesn't necessarily mean that you might want to move all of those motions as proposed. So the officers have provided some commentary to help you make that decision whether you want to move anything that was proposed at the annual meeting of electors.
I think,
Okay,
though, Councillor Melrosa's question is whether or not, where there's an officer comment that says the administration can do a particular action, whether or not it is necessary for this council at the ordinary council meeting to move a resolution that the administration does do that thing which they've foreshadowed they can do, or is the fact that the officer's comment says they can do it taken to be an indication that they will do it without or in the absence of a resolution of council to that effect. Ms Tucker.
Can I just add to your point? It says in motion 2, sorry, which one are you saying? I know it says in motion 3 that the street improvement team have already decided to install a central solid barrier, so that would mean we wouldn't have to make an amendment or a notice of motion because the team is already doing it. So and it's not the only one though, there's a couple others, so I'm just a bit confused how the town is acting on some of these motions already, or were they already doing this and then they're like, oh, we were already doing this anyway, or are they acting on these notices of motion from the electors meeting? Because I would have thought we were meant to actually instruct the town to do this, but it seems the town is already instructing themselves to do this.
Ms Tucker.
Thank you. I can't talk specifically on some of those individual motions, but my understanding is a lot of those things were actually in train anyway, that the administration was already working on, and it's just happened to be something that members of the public brought up that was relevant to them.
That's made it clearer if you needed to know.
Yep.
That was just what I was wondering. It seemed like some things were already happening, and if we want to make these things happen, we don't have to focus on those things. It's probably where it says the town can do this. So I just needed that clarity.
And that's correct. If there's something there that the officers, have said that we can do something, and council want to see that progress, but then yes, that can be a notice of motion.
Happy. Any further questions on this item? Councillor Cruiser, then Councillor Devereux, then Councillor Ive.
When the community put forward a motion at the electors meeting and that is considered operational rather than strategic, do staff still need council to endorse that, or can they take it on board without needing to council to endorse that particular motion?
Ms Tucker.
Thank you. It depends, I suppose. So if there's something operational, certainly the administration can consider that. Or if it's something that council want to direct the administration to do, then there's the ability of council to do that as well.
Councillor Devereux.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I wanted to pick up on the motion 5 about the bus stops, because I know I have had some residents in the past that rang me about the shelters being lost on Archer Street, particularly an old couple that used to catch the bus every week and were finding the bleak winter really tough without a shelter. And when I'd asked about it some time back, I know the response had been that bus shelters or the bus stops were temporary because of the work happening in Archer, but I'm assuming now that the bus stops are definite and that there aren't any to go back into Archer Street. I wanted to ask if we know why there were shelters previously in Archer Street, and given we have an emphasis on an active street in Archer Street, is it an opportunity to actually encourage not just bikes in the new protected bike lane, but also encouraging people on the bus and have a shelter when it's raining? Thanks, if there's been any consideration of that. Thanks.
Direct that question to Ms Adams.
Thank you. Through the chair, I do understand that question, and we do get that as well. I don't have an answer for you tonight, but I know that our team has been looking at it and has also been in consultation and discussion with the PTA.
Deputy Mayor Ive.
Thank you. My question's about motion 10, about the Victoria Park community space. The response given says that not-for-profit organisations and formal community groups require a certificate of currency for insurance, but casual or informal groups are not required to provide that. So I have a couple of questions on the basis of that. If a casual or informal group or an individual books the community space, there's a requirement that they explain the purpose of their meeting when they try to do that, and I know because I played around with it the other day. is that automatically then booked for them, or is there some interrogation given as to the purpose of that meeting?
Refer that question to Mr. Old, Chief Financial Officer.
I'll have to take that on notice.
All right, we'll need to take that on notice.
Thank you. My next question, how come it's just escaped my brain? It was such a good one. I can't believe it's escaped my brain. I apologise. When it comes back to me, I'll send it in an email. Thank you.
All right, thank you. A question with regards to motion 5 regarding the reinstatement of the bus shelters that were removed. The officer comment says, according to the latest data from the PTA, there are only 4 bus stops where shelters have been replaced as outlined below. And what's outlined below is only 2 tables, one of which is called List of Locations Where Bus Shelters Not Reinstated, which is completely different to the word replaced, and the next table is List of New Bus Shelters Installed. So are we able to find out, please, what are the 4 bus stops where the shelters have been replaced? Ms Adams or Mr Wong?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry, I don't have that information at hand, but I do agree with you that it does appear to be an omission with a separate table that has the 4 that were replaced. Then there were the ones that were not reinstated, and then we've got the separate table which has the new ones that were installed. So we will look to fix that.
All right, so can I just clarify then, is there any possibility that what you've put in the first table, List of Locations Where Bus Shelters Not Reinstated, that's actually the bus shelters that were removed and not replaced?
Madam Mayor, that is my understanding.
Right, so it's not the case then there's a table that's missing. It's just that the table that's there that says bus shelters not reinstated and there's 4 locations, they're the ones that the town identifies match with the motion asking the town to investigate the reinstating of a number of bus shelters that were removed previously. I just want to make clear, it's the person moving the motion at the electors meeting didn't seek to specify how many bus shelters throughout the town were removed during hard stand upgrades across the town. The officer's response indicates that data from the PTA says there were only 4 such shelters that were removed, I'm assuming, although it says 4 bus stops where shelters have been replaced. To me, that means an old shelter came out and a new shelter went in. The motion from Ms Lysandro is about the removal of bus shelters during hard stand upgrades, and she wants us to investigate reinstating them, meaning the shelters were removed, they weren't replaced by a new shelter, they remained just a hard stand with no shelter. So I'm trying to find out, is the 4 locations that are referred to as 4 bus stops where shelters have been replaced, are they actually the same as the 4 bus shelters that were taken out and no bus shelter, new one was put in their place? Ms Adams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So my understanding is that the list of, there is a list where the bus shelters have been replaced, and that there is also the list of locations where they're not replaced or reinstated. So I will seek clarity and will include that in the further considerations.
All right, thank you. And in terms of the reason for removal, so those ones where it said the bus shelters were not reinstated, which I understand to mean those shelters were removed during the hard stand upgrade and they weren't put back. 2 of them are on Archer Street, one of them on Howick and one on Orrong Road. Leaving aside Orrong Road and Howick, the 2 on Archer Street, the explanation for why they came out were that they were removed during our street works. I'm trying to get clarity from Councillor Devereux's question. I'm trying to remember previous inquiries he might have made that came back through governance. Is it the intention of the town to ask the PTA to reinstate those shelters once we've completed our Archer Mint improvement works? that cover the bus stop after Bishopsgate and the bus stop after Mars Street. Ms Adams.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I believe that it is our intention to do that, to have bus shelters reinstated, and I know that the team has been discussing that with the PTA.
All right, so can I then clarify the Archer Street bus stop after Bishopsgate Street? I'm pretty sure I know exactly, I can see it in my head, the bus seat and the bus sign with no shelter. And it was removed in January 2023, so it's more than 2 years ago. And we completed our upgrade of the town centre between Bishopsgate Street and Planet Street close to 2 years ago ourselves. So can you provide us some more information about what might be taking so long to at least reinstate the shelter at the Archer Street bus stop after Bishopsgate Street? Ms Adams?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will come back to you with that and take that on notice. Thank you.
All right, if we can take that on notice, and we may as well ask you to take on notice the exact same question for the Archer Street bus stop minus the shelter after Mars Street, because I understand we're pretty much finished in that area too. All right, thank you. So we'll hopefully take that on notice. And I do want to go back and revisit motion number 4 with regards to the electronic online petitions. So reading clause 35 of our meeting procedures local law, that appears to relate to the content of a petition, what happens when a petition comes in, namely that the local government submits it to a relevant employee to be included in their deliberations and their report on the subject matter, and then what happens at a meeting. It certainly doesn't speak to whether or not the petition, as it currently appears in clause 35, is an electronic petition or a hard copy petition. It just refers to it as a petition is to be addressed to the Mayor, be made by electors of the district, state the request on each page of the petition, contain the name, address and signature of each elector, contain a summary of the reasons for the request and state the name and details of the petitioner. So my question for the Manager of Governance and Strategy is there any reason why it is not currently open to the town to investigate a process whereby whether this clause is changed through model standard meeting procedures or not, that we can look at the mechanism for accepting a petition electronically. So in other words, it won't matter whether we end up with a new model meeting procedures local law or not, that in light of what we currently have, whether it stays that way or it goes on to refer to an e-petition, that we can in the meantime investigate what process the town might use to implement an online e-petition. And I say that because even if the government doesn't decide to include e-petitions in a future meeting procedures local law, it would still be open to this organisation to start using e-petitions if we've got a mechanism for doing so. Ms Tucker?
Thank you. Yes, this has come up quite a number of times over the past few years in local governments because there is a tendency to move towards online petitions. And this clause that the town has in their meeting procedures is very, very similar to a lot of other local governments, and I'd sort of go so far as to say it's probably in some sort of model local law that this clause is being replicated. The advice I've received previously in relation to online petitions based on clauses like this in a local law is the difficulty with the clause stating that the request on each page of a petition, state the request on each page of a petition. Of course, online petitions don't have a page and contain a signature of each elector making the request and the date each elector signed. So that's been the difficulty, and Parliament itself has had difficulty in relation to accepting online petitions. But there is a movement towards changing those, which is why that's being considered in the new model that's being drafted by Parliament for local governments, and I'd suggest that it's going to be the same for state parliament as well. But if it's the desire of this council to move ahead in relation to our current clause, I can obtain some legal advice and we can go down that line.
Thank you. My next question is it possible for the town to investigate the software programs that would be necessary to host an electronic online petition in the future? Were council to either decide they wanted to do that, or in due course a standardised meeting procedures local law comes out for all councils to adopt that provides for acceptance of e-petitions? Is that something the town could investigate in the meantime? Ms Tucker?
I haven't come across that one before about our own hosting platform for petitions. Certainly the ones that have been proposed before have gone down the line of petition.org. So there's a lot of community-based petition organisations out there, but I haven't actually examined whether there's any platform that the town could host in relation to petitions. Again, if council want us to examine that process, we can get some quotes or some advice from some contractors.
Thank you. Noting that it might be possible to start with the town's IT team as to how we could be the host of a petition, or if people are going to use something like petition.org, how we would be able to receive that electronic document that I understand would remain with the host, namely petition.org. Is that the sort of thing that the town could investigate between now and whenever it is that we might hear some update on standardised meeting procedures local law? And if it is such a thing that we could investigate, what sort of time period would the town consider would be necessary to do that type of investigation? Ms Tucker?
Thank you. I'm not sure about our internal capability in relation to developing or hosting an online platform for petitions. It might be better to get some external advice in relation to that, but that's certainly something that I can approach our IT department and get their advice on. In relation to examining the wide issue of petitions generally on online platforms, this could take some time to do. And the difficulty is, not knowing what the regulations say. It might say that you can host it from an external organisation. There's also things in relation to privacy, and there's lots of other considerations which would influence any type of sort of query to a service provider about developing some sort of platform, because they'd want to know the specifications and the parameters in relation to developing some sort of IT program to manage petitions. And without exploring all those, it makes it a bit difficult. So I'd have to get some advice. So it might take some time, might take a number of months.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on this one? Deputy Mayor Ive.
I've remembered my question on motion 10. I'm interested to find out if the community space is booked by an informal group or an individual. Say, for example, my completely fictional waste advocacy group that I'm calling Wake Me Up Before You FOGO. What happens if someone at that meeting gets hurt or is injured if there's no requirement that the people who've booked the room have this insurance?
Mr Old?
I'll have to take that on notice, because there'll be interaction on whether the group has some liability or whether the town's public liability insurance would cover that. So I'll take that on notice.
All right, we'll take that on notice. Thank you. Any other remaining questions about this item? Councillor Hamer.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just on the 35 meeting procedures, on the town's website, we've got the opportunity to ask questions online and ask for deputations online. Is that online component of that also mentioned in our meeting procedures, or is that just something that doesn't need to be specified? No. Okay, thanks.
Ms Tucker?
Thank you. That's not contained within the meeting procedures. So, yeah, we've got some scope to do how we receive those.
It's differences between the back-end procedures and the formalities. So the meeting procedures are really about guiding what happens within the council meeting, but then there are certainly things that appear to be within the town's capabilities operationally to assist those things to happen, such as letting people pre-submit their questions, but then it eventually falls to the presiding member as to whether they want to receive those questions, read them out if the person doesn't come along, to ask their questions and follow them up. So we try to make these things work that don't have any words for it in the meeting procedures. Any other questions on 11.2? No? All right, then we're moving right along to 12.2. Public comment period, draft youth action plan 2025 to 2028. Councillor Devereux, you have some questions on this one, or you didn't wish to pursue those? All right, thank you. So I have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask. Some of them, there are answers that came through late this afternoon, but just give me 1 second till I hit on the answers that came through. So the first question is, in the 21 actions listed in the draft plan, 10 actions identify as having a new budget, whilst 11 actions fall within an existing budget. What is the proposed budget for the new actions, and what is the proposed budget for the existing actions in the new plan? Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. An implementation plan has been created where each action item has an associated budget, and that totals $21,000 for year one. That is the current budget for this financial year and is planned and being proposed for next financial year, which is year one of the new youth action plan. In the new budget, that is what is classified as existing budget in the actual plan. Any new budget will be determined in future financial years based on the progress and outcomes from year one, which is obviously the 2025-26 financial year.
Thank you. Next question. The officer's report does not make reference to how many of the 26 actions in the Youth Action Plan for 2021 to 2024 were completed. Do we know how many of those 26 actions were achieved? Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. All actions from the 2021-25 Youth Action Plan have been fully or at least partially completed. So the Youth Action Plan commenced in April 2022. During April 22 to June 2023, 80% of the actions were fully completed. Within the 23-24 financial year, 100% of the actions were completed. For the 24-25 financial year, which is now the interim Youth Action Plan, we're on track for at least 90% completion.
All right, thank you. I have a follow-up question that I haven't given you advance notice of, but when you indicate that these actions have been fully or partially completed, are you referring to them being fully or partially completed by reference to the measures of success, or simply that if one of the actions was produce a youth database, that if there was the creation of a youth database, you would consider the action was fully completed, irrespective of whether we met the measures for success as outlined in the Youth Action Plan? Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Yeah, we do obviously measure the impact or the performance of the action that we undertook, but the answer to the question that I gave you was on completion of the action, not the performance of the action, how successful it was.
All right, thank you. My next question comes about because there is an additional document, 12.2.2, prepared by the Youth Advisory Council of WA, that has a table in it called Progress and Updates on the Previous Youth Action Plan. However, when one reads those updates and notes, they don't report on the measures of success from the original action plan, and sometimes they actually refer to actions that don't appear to be in the previous plan. So I guess I'm looking to work out where we sit in terms of providing progress and updates on, I guess you'd call it the actions from the previous youth action plan, that don't quite seem to actually align with the measures for success of those actions. Are you able to elaborate on that and how we read attachment 12.2.2 table 5? Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Yeah, the background paper was obviously prepared by the Youth Affairs Council, WA, so that's YACWA, provides an outline or an illustration of what we have achieved, but also seeks to identify some of the gaps and acknowledge that some of the information in that table appears to be either missing or an expansion or not necessarily the same as what our action plan identifies. But it does provide, obviously, the background that forms the basis of the new action plan. We are in the process of preparing a report outlining the impact of the actions that we've undertaken, so we understand the performance. We've done that in the past, where we've presented that on an annual basis rather than across the span of the plan, so not over 3 years. We do that on an annual basis. We are also in the process of undertaking social impact storyboards or a social impact analysis similar to some of the other community community development strategies that we have. So we have a real understanding of the impact of the plan, not just what we've achieved, but actually did it make an impact. So we are undertaking that work.
All right, thank you. So this leads to perhaps a question that I think speaks to the Youth Action Plan, but also, as you mentioned, other plans that we have in the community development space, where there are really clear, actionable measures of success, like appear in the Youth Action Plan. Is it advisable that there be a completion report at the conclusion of a period of the life of a plan that actually lets the reader know that of, say, the 26 actions that are included, 18 of them have been completed, but not just that, then there's a separate part of the report that speaks to the measure of success as to whether we actually achieve the success levels we were seeking to achieve at the outset, and if so, what is the town's view about the timing at which that type of completion report should be made available to council, for example, prior to them entering into a new action plan for a new period of time? Mr. Doy?
The answer to your first question is yes. We should be measuring our performance, and our position is that we do it annually, but also at the completion of the strategy. So in this instance, the Youth Action Plan ran from a period of 2021 to 2024, albeit it started in April 22. I'm not sure the history there, but it started in April 22, and there is also an interim Youth Action Plan. However, all of those things, now it's coming to the end, should be, the performance of those actions should be measured and reported on, and will be. But we also do it on an annual basis, so we can understand how we've performed for the year as well. So that they are things that we are currently doing. So they're not things that we need to do. We're actually in the process of doing those things or have completed those annual reports. I do also know that a community-facing impact report outlining the measures of success will be developed for the 2021-24 Youth Action Plan and the interim Youth Action Plan within the next fortnight, and will be published on the town's website prior to the public comment period for this plan, if it was to be endorsed to proceed by council.
Thank you. So just so I can get clear, with the annual report that you're referring to, and I note what's been explained in the answer to my question, it's one thing to have a Youth Action Plan annual report that is driven by young people and suitable for reading by them. But isn't it the case that the town is reporting to council through the corporate business plan for all the actions from the Youth Action Plan that are deliverable in a particular year of the corporate business plan? That's correct, isn't it? Yeah. So I guess my question is not focusing on an annual report that is outward looking for consumers to read, as in young people to read and see how the Youth Action Plan is going. This is more around completion reports at the end of an action plan to say how much of this do we actually get right, not just how many actions did we achieve, but how much success aka impact, we think we've managed to make as a result of it, and to have that information available before we're moving to the next iteration of such a plan. Is that the ideal goal in the future, that we get to that stage where the completion report is ready to come to council at the time we're getting ready to be recommended to endorse a new one? Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Yep, that's completely reasonable, and I would say that would be good practice. Yes.
Thank you. Going forward, for that kind of action to take place, it's one thing if the action plan's 3 years, but let's say, for example, we do an action plan that lasts for 10 years, could be a pretty big body of work to then be done. Is that something that council should be looking at, needing to devoting resources, budget-wise, as well as staffing, to get done in the life of a plan? So when we're putting money towards it, that at some point at the right financial year, we're allocating some money towards the preparation of the, not the exit report, but the completion report on the life of an action plan, so that we can make sure we have the resources to get it done at the right time.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. So just clarifying, you're talking about resourcing the actual reporting, including the final report. I would say that that is something that we can. I don't think that that is something that requires extra funding or resources from what we have. That is something that we should be doing as a matter of business.
All right, thank you. That was all my questions about the Youth Action Plan. Were there any others? So Councillor Devereux first, then Councillor Cruiser.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I wasn't going to ask the question that I had asked, but I did just reflect on looking through the 80 pages of the background paper. Wondered whether it is normal practice in reports of that length to have an executive summary or request an executive summary from people that are producing them for us, to allow us to digest and, in a sense, get to the nub of an impact, as Mayor Vernon has suggested. Thanks.
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Yeah, that's totally reasonable to have an executive summary provided for a long report, and should be standard. So that's a fair comment, and I don't see why that couldn't be provided as part of this attachment in the future.
Thank you.
Councillor Cruiser.
I understand that in advertising this for comment, anyone will be able to comment on it, but do we have any specific process for getting feedback from the Vic Park Young Leaders program on the draft action plan specifically?
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Thanks for the question. Well, we have structured meetings with our leaders, so they through that process they're providing input and feedback into the plan. In terms of broader consultation with the young people, the Victoria Park, I'd probably take it on notice just in terms of how that's occurred, albeit I suspect there will be some information within the report as to how it's targeted, but I'll take it on notice just to provide a proper answer.
Anything further, Councillor Cruiser? No? Any other questions about this item? No? All right, so moving on to 12.3, Community Benefit Strategy Update. Councillor Devereux, you had a question about this item.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just one question in relation to the perceived relevance of the community benefits strategy to the community. The question was, given the low number of respondents to the review of the community benefits strategy, does it raise questions about the efficacy of the current plan, not just in terms of its publicity, but also its priorities and focus, particularly in relation to the perceived relevance to the local community? And if so, how can this be tackled?
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Thanks for the question, Councillor Devereux. So the refined strategy is built upon review of key focus areas and priorities for the town, but it's aligned with the skills, capabilities, capacity, focus areas and intent priorities of the participating organisations as well. So from the administration's perspective, it's ensured that the revised strategy has relevance to the local community, the participating organisations and the town. The report, as identified in the report, and the key findings, more concerted efforts are required though to provide the benefits to promote the benefits and the outcomes of the strategy, so we can celebrate its impact and relevance, but also make sure people know about it and they can actually provide feedback on whether it's working for them. They can and understand the impact. Development of a biennial implementation plan provides sufficient flexibility in the delivery of strategic objectives to adapt to changes in the community and information that we receive, and town priorities over time to ensure it remains relevant. So that does mean that is flexible, and we can be flexible with our partners over time based upon what we discover.
Thank you. Can I just follow up on that? So given the suggestion that the revised strategy, the revision of the strategy has ensured that it will have relevance to the local community, is there a sense that if the community doesn't know what's happening, that maybe we haven't hit what the community's perception of their priorities are?
Mr. Doy?
I think it's reasonable to come to that conclusion with only 10 submissions that are received. However, our partners in the strategy and the town do feel like it's being well received and it is providing impact, but that it is a potential concern that only 10 submissions were received as well. So yeah, take that point.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Devereux. So I'm going to follow up my previous questions, which were done at length with regards to the Youth Action Plan, but I think are translatable to other plans and strategies. So noting again that the officer's report doesn't contain any completion report of the community benefit strategy from its outset through to 2024-5. Is this another instance where it would be appropriate going forward for a completion report on a strategy like this to be presented to Council that explains of the identifiable actions or strategic outcomes? There's been, objectively speaking, a measure of success, return on investment for the town, whichever way you want to explain that, completely separate to things like the feedback that we've gotten from having advertised the next version of this, because I'm now beginning to wonder how people would have come at their answers to the survey questions, given that the majority of their answers were that they weren't aware of anything. So on what did they base, I guess, them putting in feedback to the new strategy when it'd be unlikely they have anything in writing that they could have read showing how the outgoing strategy had actually been beneficial? Does that kind of make sense, Mr. Doy?
The first part definitely does, and if that's okay, I'll have a go because I agree with you that, and my answer is the same as the Youth Action Plan, which is for all of these, for all of the plans that are sitting in, well, across the board at the town. To be honest, we should be providing a performance measurement report, and I know that for our community plans, there's social impact reporting that's being progressively done across all of these plans. There's a number of them that have it, which provide a very clear indication of the impact of the work that we're, not just whether we've completed or not, but the impact of the work. It just so happens that tonight the Youth Action Plan and the Community Benefit Strategy doesn't have those, but they should, and they will. So that will happen. The second part, I'm not certain how to answer that.
I think you've probably answered the question that it is advisable to have that kind of level of reporting available. And I guess I obviously didn't do the community feedback survey on the community benefit strategy, so I don't actually know what was made available to the community to read up before they actually did the survey. And the answers suggesting that people just had no idea about these things indicates that perhaps they weren't really reading anything. I don't know if you're able to tell us what information we made available to people. I assume that, I don't know, maybe they were given a link to look at the document called Community Benefit Strategy so they could see what was proposed to be done without them actually having any knowledge about what actually was done. Is that something that you can answer tonight, Mr. Doy?
Well, we'll take it on notice, just get the proper, just to make sure I get a proper answer. But my understanding obviously, as a supplement to the questions that were asked, there was a key findings, quite a detailed key findings report that was attached to the February report. The February OCM. So they would have had access to that, which outlined the impact of the programs that are being delivered by our partners, as well as the recommendations for what we should do going forward as well.
All right, thank you. Any other questions about this item? No. All right, next one is 13.1, TVP 2503 Tree Audit Services. Councillor Cruiser, you had some questions about this item?
I'm happy to take those as already given.
All right, thank you. 13.2, stand out for the night. Food organics and garden organics implementation. Lots of questions to flow. I've got some order here, so I'm going to go Councillor Minson first for your questions on FOGO. I think, did you indicate to me you didn't need to pursue those now tonight? Okay.
Right. Thank you.
So, Councillor Devereux.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I'll just ask the first question that I had to allow some follow-up, which just refers to the page 67 of the ABF report that says if FOGO is implemented this year, there is a short lead time to implementation. And so my question was, from my understanding, there has been a long-standing wish from Council that has been again reflected strongly over the last year on FOGO implementation. So can I hear why it is considered there is such a short lead time to implementation now considered? Thanks.
Track that question to Ms Adams.
Thank you, through the chair. The FOGO rollout communications will only start once we have a confirmed date for the actual rollout. So once that calendar is confirmed, then we will be able to confirm our contract and bin delivery times, etc. And then we estimate that we need up to 12 weeks for the actual campaign, the education campaign.
Thanks for that. I was, I hadn't realised that it was only 10 to 12 weeks that was referred to in terms of the implementation time plan. So 10 to 12 weeks doesn't sound so bad to me. Thanks.
All right, Councillor Miles.
So I do have a few questions. I've also added a few more. So first question, at the recent concept forum, the councillors and the mayor advised that the town has a number of options for FOGO processing at commercial composting facilities, which include Go Organics, Northern Bannister, Pure Earth and EMRC. So are these facilities still operating and composting FOGO?
Track that question to either Ms Adams or Mr Wong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Some of the information provided at the our workshop is confidential, so there are a number of facilities that do take processing, but in terms of how we answer some of these questions, it might just depend upon whether they're considered confidential for the purposes of this report.
All right, well, Ms Adams, my expectation would be that you would let us know if the question specifically that was being asked involved the potential divulgement of confidential information. But are you suggesting now that the answer to Councillor Miles's question divulges confidential information? Given that all those facilities are public and they all have information available on their websites about their FOGO processing abilities.
Madam Mayor, we will give an answer that's general in nature for that. Yes.
So the answer to Councillor Miles's question is, are all those three facilities still in the business of processing FOGO? Sorry, four.
Yep, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that's correct. Those facilities are still in operations, processing FOGO. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Miles.
So Would the process be for the town that if we wanted to pursue option 2 and pursue the FOGO, that we would go out to tender, and then one or more of these companies would then provide like a quote for the service? Is that how it would work?
Ms Adams?
Thank you. Through the chair, it would be, as we detailed in that option 2, that yes, we would go out for a short-term contract to the market and see who we could get to process the FOGO. Yes.
And the quote we'd be getting will be that we'd be collecting from the curbside FOGO waste for processing at a commercial composting facility.
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, that's correct. That's our intention.
So in number 15 in the town's report, it says that one of the reasons that you've suggested option 1, which is delaying FOGO, is that there is uncertainty as to where the processed product produced by the company would be used. Why is this a consideration for a service delivery tender when the service that we're requesting is collection and processing of FOGO?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, I think there's particular community interest in FOGO, and in particular, there's been a lot of that reputational impact that's been reflected in recent media reports, and so the town, taking that holistic view, is looking at the potential expectations of the community once the FOGO is collected and processed.
Sorry. So when we consider other tenders for other collection services, such as curbside recycling and bulk verge collections, do we usually give consideration to the market conditions that a private company might face when dealing with materials once they've been collected from the town?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, we do that, and one example is for the recycled material. So we do look at what actually happens with that, even though strictly speaking that is purely for the collection of that material. So the town actually actively requests, and then we do receive a monthly report that gives us a breakdown of that, and that helps us assess the town's contributions as well as potential contamination rates and the like.
Okay, so the town report also mentions another reason for delaying FOGO by choosing option 1 is uncertainty whether there are large-scale users of compost in the metropolitan area. How is the lack of certainty around large-scale users of compost in the metropolitan area relevant to the rollout of FOGO in the town of Victoria Park?
Ms Adams?
I think through the chair, sorry, I do understand that the intention is for it to go to compost, and sometimes even soil improvers where it cannot be just composted itself. But at this stage, the compost material is not having a large take-up at the moment, which is the referenced large-scale users of compost in the metropolitan area, and that's primarily due to potential odour issues and the like. And so it simply is that, we are uncertain, and that's an industry-wide issue, not just our opinion. We're just uncertain as to what that take-up would be.
Does the town not consider that farmland outside of the metropolitan area will be a more practical application for the industrial quantities of compost being produced?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, yes, that lends itself naturally that if there's not so much take up in the metropolitan area, that it would be outside the metropolitan area, but the town doesn't have much control over that. And our understanding is that for it to reach that compostable or compost level, there has to be a marked reduction and very low amount of contamination in that FOGO material, which our understanding is not currently being achieved on a large scale.
But the reason that's been given in the report is that wanting to delay FOGO is because you're uncertain about the demand for compost in the metropolitan area. So you're saying actually that's probably not a factor, really. Wasn't that a question? That's what I said.
Sounds
Yeah.
a little bit like either a rhetorical question.
Well, I guess I was saying,
but-
are you saying that whether compost is used in the metropolitan area is irrelevant? Anyway, it doesn't matter. If it doesn't make sense, I can move on to the next one. I've got a few more. Okay. Is it possible to explain in 15C, you say loss of the town's go material for blending and use as compost. So could you just explain how is the go material being lost?
Ms Adams?
So, yeah, we did word it as loss of the town's go material for blending. So what we're meaning there is we don't believe it will be available or no longer suitable to be blended with other organic materials, such as food waste. We also did talk about, whether it's being processed into compost as opposed to the soil improvers that we referenced. So if our go material is now mixed with food organics, we lose the ability for our high quality, with a very low contamination rate material, our go material, to be used for that purpose.
Did you just say that at the moment we blend the go material with food waste? Is that what you just said? Can you just repeat what you said again, would you please?
Don't think that's what she said, but Ms Adams?
So essentially, our go material is very high quality. It's over 99% actually, so of purity. So one of the things that our go material is used for is blending to, on balance, actually make other organic material blends of a higher quality.
And when you said that before, you did say that you blended it with food waste. In fact, in the email response to me, you said that it would be blended with other organic materials and food waste. So my question is, that is what you said in the email, yes? In the email response, you said that our go material is blended with other organic materials like food waste.
Councillor Miles, is it necessary to ask Ms Adams to confirm something she's already said to you in writing?
Well, I guess what I don't understand is...
Let's concentrate on the things that you're not clear on and try to get some questions for Ms Adams about those things.
Yes.
Because I'm sure that she'll confirm anything she's put in writing to you already is
saying
correct.
That if we did FOGO, we would not be blending garden organics with food waste, yet by doing FOGO, we'd literally be mixing garden organics with food waste. So I am confused around how we're losing the go material because it's literally being used for the same thing. But maybe I need to reformat a question around
Ms
that.
Adams, I think she probably knows the point you're getting at now.
Thank you. I think I understand that, potentially we could have worded that better. So when we were saying it is blended with other organic materials, yes, that does include food waste. So you might get a higher contaminated load of FOGO from another council or another contributor, and our pure material of go is mixed then with that FOGO material. Potentially, that is one of the potential blends, which then makes the contamination rate, the net contamination rate, less.
Sure, but in the report where you've said the go material's lost, it's not actually lost. What you mean is that the quality is slightly reduced. Is that correct?
Ms Adams?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So through the Chair, potentially we can look at the wording of that. What we are meaning is it's lost in the market as a product that is very fit for use. And as I was saying, the town's contamination rate of our go material is very low. And when you look across the industry, at the FOGO industry, the rate of contamination is relatively high.
So just a quick question about contamination. My understanding was that the FOGO in the metropolitan area is 2% contaminated by weight and slightly higher in regional WA. Do you know if those figures are still correct?
That question to Mr. Wong.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Mayor. We do know that 2% is the contamination rate by some metropolitan local governments. There are also other councils with, as you mentioned, having a higher contamination rate. Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
So the 2% is not across the board. There are some who are achieving 2%, but there are others who are not, who are achieving much higher rates.
Do
of
we have an
contamination.
average for the, do you have the details for the metropolitan area? Or could you, obviously not right now, but would you be able to provide that information on notice, or do you have a bit more detail?
Mr. Wong?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We do know the rates from certain councils, but at this stage, we're not aware of any average. And also, I don't think this is confidential. And also, there is a lack of information from a number of processors for a number of reasons. And therefore, I've not seen an average having been published, but we will look for it. And if it's available, we will share it with council. Thank you.
Thanks. So number 16 in the report states that option 1 will deliver more environmentally sustainable outcomes. So could the town please explain how delaying FOGO, sending food waste to landfill and creating significantly higher carbon emissions will achieve a more sustainable outcome?
Mr. Wong?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is based on the information that we've got at this stage, which is that there's a lot of uncertainties still in the industry, and also when we talk about the contamination rate, for example, we understand that especially in the first year of introduction, there has been a high a number of incidents where processed FOGO, having gone through the process, having been diverted to landfill rather than being processed further into a compost. And one of the examples, this is reported in a recent news article. Even though it's outside of the metro area, Banbury Harvey, a regional council, they are at the moment trying to dispose of FOGO material which cannot be processed into compost, and it's quite a large quantity of it. Thank you.
So my understanding is that contamination in the metropolitan area is 2% and contamination in the regional areas is 5%. I know that they've got some issues in the regional areas, but do you know of any incidences in the metropolitan area where contaminated FOGO has had to be landfilled rather than just blended with other products to dilute the contamination?
Is that information that's able to be disclosed based on your knowledge? No, so that's not information that's able to be disclosed, Councillor Miles.
Can you remind me how many households currently don't have a go bin, please?
Mr. Wong?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Roughly 10,000 properties. Thank you.
So 10,000 do or 10,000 don't? Sorry.
10,000 that at the moment are still having a 2-bin system, so they are yet to receive the 3rd bin, which is a FOGO bin. Thank you.
Okay, so if we delay FOGO in order to try and ensure that the town's FOGO does not end up in landfill, we will be landfilling 10,000 households go waste and 16,000 households FOGO, faux waste until we sign up to FOGO. Is that correct?
Mr. Wong?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Miles, can I just clarify with you your last question about if we don't go to FOGO, as per the officer recommendation, there'll be 10,000 properties worth of FOGO that will be going, or 10,000 properties worth of faux go,
and then 16,000 faux. We've basically got 6,000 bins going with green waste. So that's currently not going to landfill. Everyone else is green waste, and the entire town's faux waste will be going to landfill to try and get the better outcome of not putting it in landfill.
I'm just wondering about the way you've expressed that, because not all of those 10,000 properties that don't currently have a go bin have any green waste, because you've obviously got thousands of properties that are in high-rise apartments which don't have trees, etc. Therefore, they don't actually have any green waste.
They might be
to reduce.
sweeping some leaves.
Well, I get that they may be, but again, that work might actually not be being done at any great particular level. So it just, I'm concerned about understanding the impact of those figures that you're providing. As in, what is the information that you're still seeking from the town staff to understand this?
I guess number 16 of the report says that option 1 will be more environmentally sustainable, because by delaying sending, they said, option 1 says it will deliver a more sustainable outcome, and then in the reply that I got, it said in order to try and ensure that the town's FOGO doesn't end up in landfill, we'd continue landfilling food waste, and also then I guess maybe not 10,000 households, but potentially more, for the purpose of trying to avoid landfilling food waste and garden organics. So I guess
if FOGO is a better outcome, that our food organics as well as our garden organics are actually sent somewhere and they're processed and they have another life, that's a better outcome than putting our food and garden organics into landfill. So if we're going to delay the opportunity to convert and start sending our FOGO material, faux plus go, for processing so it can have another life, how is it better environmentally, sustainability-wise, for us to delay the opportunity to send it, both the faux and the go, to a better life as another product? Ms. Adams?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Probably 2 parts to that. So the first is that the town is recommending delaying until we can hopefully have better certainty from the state, from the industry and from the market about where the FOGO that's processed will end up. So it's not that we're saying we don't want to roll it out, we're just asking for some time for those factors to provide a bit more certainty. And the second part is clarity around our response. So it's correct that in the meantime and until the town adopts FOGO, the town's faux material would be mixed up with general waste and, yes, would end up in landfill. However, in terms of saying on balance, we believe it's it's more environmentally sustainable. It's looking at the fact that we would still be able to retain and use our Go product. in that meantime, instead of losing that being mixed up with the FOGO.
Councillor Miles?
But when you say losing, you're losing go, like it's going to a FOGO facility and being processed. So I feel like to say you're losing go is a bit misleading, but that wasn't a question, so I'll shut up. Sorry about that. But I do have a question. So the average red lidded bin contains 40% food waste usually. Do we know if that's the case in Vic Park based on your audits of red bins?
Mr Wong?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that is roughly the percentage after the extraction of gold since 2022. It used to be around 50%. Thanks.
Do we know what the tonnage is, or just the percent?
Mr Wong?
Yep, thank you, Madam Mayor. The tonnage for gold is 2,000. Tonnage for gold is about 4,000. Sorry, tons.
Per year? Yep.
Sorry, per year. Yep, thank you.
And do we know how much go waste goes into the green bins versus using just the bulk verge pickups, or do we not measure that data?
Mr Wong?
Yep, thank you, Madam Mayor. That fluctuates from year to year. For the recent year, or the last financial year, I believe the tonnage was 800 tons. Yep.
How does, so if FOGO ending up in landfills is a risk, which you've listed in the risk report under reputation, how does the town think that delaying the FOGO rollout is mitigating that risk?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, there's no perfect answer for that, but on balance, we believe that we're trying to mitigate it by delaying it until there's better certainty about how it's going to be processed and where it will go. So we are looking also at a number of other councils that have, for the same reasons, chosen to either delay FOGO or are now facing the same potential situation that the town would face, which is that their FOGO, which is all being carefully sorted, is actually going into landfill.
So I just had, almost at the end, I just had a question about the home composting promotion, which you mentioned a few times in the report. So I sent an elected member request in December, and the town said that they ran 5 composting workshops in 2024, 57 attendees, 44 households. So if we've got 16,000 households, is there a plan to increase the number of households? And you're proposing delaying the rollout of FOGO. Is there a plan to increase the number of households participating in home composting workshops to more than 0.2% of the town's households?
Ms Adams?
So through the chair, the town agrees that the uptake was not high. It was very low. The town cannot ensure the uptake is high. We do intend to advertise better and promote the town's home composting workshops more, but it's not something we can mandate or enforce.
Sure. Have you set any internal targets with kind of the number of households you'd be aiming to try and get involved with this, or is that not something you can share?
Ms Adams?
Thank you. So through the chair, we did have, I think over the last about 3 years, we've had discussions on this, but there's been little point in setting a target because it's been hard to achieve. So even in spite of the promotion, the people who have taken up that offer have, by all accounts, enjoyed it. But in terms of getting a higher uptake, it's been challenging.
Okay, final. I really think this is the final question. So in the recent Money Matters survey that the town conducted, 93% of participants stated that they would like the same, a little more, or much more improvement to waste services, including FOGO. How was this considered when the town opted to recommend option 1 rather than option 2?
Ms Adams?
Thank you. So again, the town reiterates that we fully support the intended outcomes of FOGO, and we intend to implement or recommend implementation of FOGO, which was seen by the town even putting forward the tender for the bins that will be required for the FOGO rollout. So we do support the high percentage of participants as well in saying that they would like an improvement in their waste service there. What we are concerned about is mitigating the risk that our FOGO ends up in landfill. And at this stage, we are not confident that the industry or the market will support it.
I know it's the final question, but this is definitely the final question. You've mentioned a few times this idea of FOGO ending up in landfill. And I think earlier you said that you couldn't share any information about it. Like, is there any? This feels very much to me like hearsay. So it would be really helpful to have some kind of data or report or something that's saying how much of this FOGO is ending up in landfill. Is there any information in the public space that, excluding the situation in Margaret River, but anything in the metropolitan area that backs up this claim that FOGO might end up in landfill that you could share? Anything?
Ms Adams?
Thank you. Can we take that on notice?
Yes, thank you for your time.
We'll take that part on notice. So I do have a couple of questions of my own about this. So you indicated in answer to a question from Councillor Miles pretty early in her questions about the process that the town, if it were to follow option 2, would go out to tender to the market for a contract for the collection and processing of our FOGO material. Is there another option available apart from going out to tender, such as the Walga Preferred Supplier Panel or the use of another local government / regional local government who can process our FOGO material? Ms Adams or Mr Wong?
Thank you. Madam Mayor, yes, but our understanding is it still requires, it's a form of short-term contract. So yes.
I understand that, but obviously tender for council means there are certain requirements, time has to pass, brief has to be prepared, etc. So specifically, it's my understanding that the East Metropolitan Regional Council does FOGO processing at its Red Hill facility according to its own website. And as a regional local government, it is my understanding, and I'm seeking clarification and confirmation from you, that it would be open to the town of Victoria Park to enter into a short-term contract with EMRC for the processing and disposal of our FOGO material. Is that correct? Without needing to go out to an open tender to the marketplace? Either Ms Adams or Mr Wong.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, and we don't mean to sound evasive, but however, it is either quotes are sought, or if it turns out it might be a tender, we would go out to, when we say go out to market, there are only a few that would be able to provide that service. So it's possible it may be one of them.
Look, I understand that it might be a very small pool of candidates who could take our FOGO material, but I'm trying to ascertain the process. So you answered Councillor Miles's question before saying it would need to be a tender to the open market, but I'm trying to ascertain if it's actually possible for it not to be a tender to the open market, but it's a direct short-term contract, either through the Walga Preferred Supplier Panel, and I don't know whether EMRC is on that, or directly with another local government, because it was my understanding that procurement rules do exempt local governments, so we can deal directly with another local government if they have services that we wish to utilise without having to go to an open tender in the market. Happy if Mr Old wants to jump in here as the procurement specialist in the room. Mr Old.
You are correct in that there are some provisions in the Local Government Act or the attached regs about dealing direct with another local government. However, that does not necessarily mean you don't go through a tender or recognised procurement process. So it's not a... I have never actually done it professionally, so I would have to probably seek advice, and perhaps best we take this on question because it depends on the value. If it's going to be a short-term contract and it doesn't exceed $500,000 or sorry, $250,000, I don't know what the value of this might be, so there could be a number of outcomes. But I think we'll take it on notice and get concrete information for you.
All right, if we could take it on notice that we get some advice on what are the processes that are available other than simply an open tender to the market, because I wasn't suggesting we wouldn't go through a procurement process. We certainly would, but it may be very different to the procurement process we have to go through if we're going to an open market tender. The next question I have is around the administration's comments that you're looking for certainty from the market about where our FOGO material would go, and there's a lack of confidence by the town that our FOGO would not end up in landfill. So my question is, if we entered into a contract with a organisation processing FOGO material, are there contractual mechanisms that the town can seek to have included in a contract for the processing of our FOGO material to ensure that it does not go to landfill? Ms Adams or Mr Wong?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've had preliminary discussions. So there are always contractual mechanisms that we could try and implement. I think on balance we would like to have some certainty that those were achievable for a contractor to be able to achieve, any mechanisms that we're looking to enforce. And at this stage, the town's opinion is that we don't have that confidence.
All right, further to Councillor Miles's question, I guess she's looking for proof and evidence, which I'm also seeking. Do we have anecdotal evidence from any of the other councils in the metropolitan area who are already and have been for some years sending their FOGO material for processing that they have a concern that their FOGO material is simply being fast-tracked to landfill instead of being used in the way in which it was intended to be processed back into composting materials? Ms Adams or Mr Wong?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To my understanding, there's no published advice to that question. I would only be passing on potential hearsay, so I'm really sorry to not be able to answer that publicly.
That's all right. I did ask for anecdotal, not published information. So does your answer suggest that there is anecdotal information that's been given to the town by other local governments who've got FOGO contracts that they're concerned that their FOGO material is actually just being sent to landfill? Ms Adams or Mr Wong?
Madam Mayor, I'll take that on notice.
All right, my next question is, were it to be the case that at the ordinary council meeting on the 20th of May, council would decide to pursue option 2, and assuming that a suitable contract of a short-term nature could be entered into for the town's FOGO material, it appears to me from the proposed time of November 2025, I want confirmation that there is sufficient time then for the 10 to 12 weeks for the implementation rollout that's foreshadowed in the officer's recommendation. Is that the case, that resolution on the 20th of May, short-term contract is entered into within, say, the following, 4 to 8 weeks after that there's still time to go ahead with the implementation with an end date in mind of the end of 2025. Ms Adams or Mr Wong?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the town's position is that we do believe that it is adequate time. It's tight, but yes, it will depend upon a May decision.
All right, thank you. And just to clarify, with regards to, we had obviously a waste workshop recently, but I think if memory served me correct, the information we got was left on the basis that the town was still working through its approach to those living in multiple dwelling units as to how they would propose to deal with their FO/GO material. Has the town firmed up a position as yet as to how it wished to deal with occupants of multiple unit dwellings as yet, if there were to be a rollout that occurred before the end of 2025? Mr Wong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have further discussed with organisations including WALGA, and our current proposal is to roll out FOGO to normal or landed properties first, let it run for, let's say, 1 year, while we continue to work with the caretakers or strata managers and the like for the multi-unit dwellings. And it is likely to be a stage rollout to the multi-unit dwellings after year 1. Hopefully I've answered the question. Thanks.
So the money that's currently set aside in the budget in this financial year for the acquisition of the kitchen caddies and / bin liners, there's sufficient in that budget for us to obtain the relevant kitchen caddies for rollout to, it's the almost 6,000 homes that are identified. Is that right, Mr Wong?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. That's correct. Yep.
And would that see everyone who's currently got a go bin gets the kitchen caddy? I've understood that correct, Mr Wong?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's correct. Yep.
If the town were to enter into a short-term contract that would collect the FOGO material of 6,000 households, would it be your view that it would be open to the town to expand that program into year 2 of, say, a short-term contract of 12 months that had, say, an option to renew for a further 12 months or a further 2 terms worth of 12 months? Would it then be possible to enter into a contract now that would allow us to increase from the 6,000 properties collecting FOGO in year 1, so that, say, for example, if we got a short-term contract for 12 months, we then renewed it for a further 12 months, and we asked them to expand the program to, say, add another, another 3,000 to 6,000 more homes in the second year? Do you think that's something that is currently potentially negotiable? Mr Wong?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. There are 2 separate parts, if I understood the question correctly. The collection of bins, our current contract does have provisions to pick up FOGO bins based on a number of scenarios, all the way up to 16,000 bins per week, from, I think, the lowest minimum of 6,000 bins per week. Whereas processing, the contract that we will be seeking for a short-term contract, the conditions will be that they are flexible enough to receive or process FOGO from, I would say, 2,000 tonnes all the way up to 4,000 tonnes, which is the maximum the town will currently estimated to have. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Are there any other questions about this? Councillor Hamer.
Thanks, Ms Bennett. Just following up on that last question. So the current bin pickup contract that we have that expires next year, they have the capacity to do these pickups alongside that, and regardless of the location of the FOGO processing, they'd be able to take it to any of those locations.
Mr Wong?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. That is correct. We have in the current contract a schedule of rates for various scenarios based on the distance to be travelled by the Cleanaways trucks. We also have the option, depending on which FOGO processing arrangement that we will end up agreeing to. Basically, for example, we could deliver to a transfer station, for example, at Shenton Park, where WMRC operates from, and then it is then transported to Jinjin or somewhere from Shenton Park. But at the same time, our current contract with Cleanaway will also allow us to deliver waste or FOGO to Neerabup or Tamala Park, which is the ultimate, I guess, destination that we are looking to use. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. But in the confidential 13.2.3 estimation, there's no mention of those transport costs in those tables.
Mr Wong?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I'll take it on notice if that's okay. Thank you.
Yep, we'll take that on notice.
The other point of contention seems to be the possible contamination rate of FOGO in the metro area. Is there a common toleration percentage that the 4 providers can deal with, and any more than that? What's the tipping point for contamination ruining the whole load and needing to go to landfill, or is that not able to be shared?
Mr Wong?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. The percentage is just one of the factors that processors will need to consider, because by weight, 2% of let's say metal or glass versus 2% of plastic. This is non-compostable plastic. It's actually two vastly different outcome or product purity in terms of processing. There's also, with the current Australian standard 4454 related to compost quality, there's potential for other contaminants which are very, very lightweight. For example, PFAS becoming one of the listed or classified contaminants to be removed. This is just an example. So even a very small percentage of such type of contaminants would in future potentially become unacceptable by processors.
Okay, thanks for that. So I read that there's 3 risks of that of our FOGO going to landfill. 1 being the contamination rate and what it is. 2 being whether there's a market for that product at the end or not. And maybe a 3rd risk is whether the processing facility has the capacity, or whether that. So they're the 3 main risks that you would say are still not known enough to recommend going forward at this point in time.
Mr Wong?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yep, those are the 3 main risks, among other risks. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And then the other one's the 2,000 tonnes of GO that we've got at the moment, which is of a high purity. Is that like a value to the town, or is that just something that is helpful to have to blend other people's products?
Mr Wong?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. That's officer's opinion that in the market, environmentally, is a highly sought after product, having a 99.7% purity. This is based on the audit that we've done last month. We don't sell it. We don't make money out of it. But we know that it helps the industry to produce various garden soil conditioners or compost products. Thank you.
Thanks. That's all.
Thanks, Councillor Hamer. Any other questions about this item? Councillor Devereux.
Just one small question. Are you aware of the City of Melville selling FOGO compost bags every second Sunday of the month from the Piney Lakes Community Garden?
Mr. Wong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, and a number of councils, such as Bayswater, I think they're giving out free compost bags. Free bags of compost derived from FOGO. I also know that City of Netlands, for example, they sell those compost materials as well, similar to what Melville is doing. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions on this item? No? All right, then we'll move to our last item, which is 14.2, Financial Statements, March 2025. Anybody with questions on 14.2? I'm suspicious. It has my name here on the Mayor's agenda, and I can't think of any questions I asked about 14.2. But I did 14.1. If I ask questions about 14.2, I'm clearly losing my mind because I've forgotten all about it. Not seeing any questions from me or any answers to me about 14.2. Mr. Old, are you able to help my old memory out?
It is not on the official question list.
Oh, it's not on the official question list. Well, there you go. Oh, well, that's good news for everyone then, isn't it? Well, on that basis, that's pretty much it. That brings us to item 16, motion of which previous notice has been given. There are none on the list at this time. Item 17 is public participation time, which I open at 8:27 p.m. and close at 8:27 p.m, there being no members of the public left in the public gallery. Item 18, questions from members without notice on general matters. Is that fun time? No? Not a single question. All right, 19, confidential matters, we don't have any. So at 8:28 p.m, declare the agenda briefing forum is closed. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Those who joined us on live streaming, good evening. Thank you. you.